Now, on this dark day for the British Parliament, it's probably a good idea that I bring a Member of Parliament on who's worthy of the name, worthy of the letters MP after his name. He's the Conservative MP for Newark and Sherwood, Patrick Mercer, sometime of this parish. And I welcome him onto the show once again. Patrick, welcome.
George, good evening to you. How are you?
Very well, sir. Very well. But I'm going to disagree sharply with you on this subject. But the floor is yours, first of all. Why are the Wikileaks such a bad thing from your point of view?
Well, George, clearly not all of them are such a bad thing. The things I would concentrate on particularly, though, are the compromise of confidential memoranda between particularly diplomats, governments and senior military officers. Currently, we are waging a very difficult war against an insurgency in Afghanistan and Pakistan, as you well know, with an alliance that's extremely difficult to keep together for all sorts of good and not so good reasons. Diplomacy is really the circuit board of these affairs, of keeping alliances together. And if diplomats, politicians, military officers, etc., cannot talk quietly and confidentially without opinions being broadcast across the world, then that's deeply, deeply unhelpful, may well threaten alliances, and may well ultimately cost lives.
Well, let's start with Afghanistan, if we may, Patrick. As you know, you're a supporter of the war, and I'm an opponent of it. But leave that aside for a minute. Isn't it the British public's right to know that the President, Karzai, for whom we're fighting, and our young men are giving their blood, actually hates us and thinks that we're ridiculous, thinks that we're not up to the job? Isn't it worth knowing that that's the sort of person that we're fighting for?
Possibly, George. And the trouble is that we can reduce all of the generalities to particulars and argue over particular details. I don't think that is necessarily the worst thing that has come to light over this. What I do think is unhelpful, though, is views of the views of the allies of one another, the lack of faith that allies have in one another, and you can be absolutely sure that if American opinion is deprecatory towards British military efforts, then there will have been British opinion along similar lines, and not just that, but Canadian, German, French, and the rest of it. By showing the alliance to be anything less than allied and unified, we're doing our enemies' jobs for them. Now, again, you and I will disagree over the cause, but I think we would both agree that we must prosecute this campaign as effectively as we can in order to get out of the place as fast and effectively as we can. To make the alliance look anything less than unified aids and abets the Taliban and indeed Al-Qaeda.
But that's advocating covering up the truth, Patrick. You're never normally guilty of that.
No, I don't think it is, George. I think that diplomacy is the process of discussion, of investigating opinion, of trying to find ways of compromise and solution to problems, and a lot of that involves people having confidential conversations, which may well alter other people's opinions, or may well lead towards solutions. By exposing those sorts of conversations, that's unhelpful. That doesn't help the process of arriving at a solution.
Well, let's move on to another issue. It emerged in the Wikileaks traffic that Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State of the United States of America, signed a missive to American diplomats that they should spy on their diplomatic counterparts. And amongst the tasks that she set them, and I have it in front of me, is the task of procuring, somehow, presumably not by actually picking their pockets, but procuring somehow, the credit card details of other diplomats, including diplomats in the United Nations. And you know, as well as I do, that spying on the United Nations by the United States is actually legally precluded by treaty. In other words, her missive is an encouragement to acts of illegality. Shouldn't we know that?
I think we probably should, George. That's why I said that there are elements inside these Wikileaks, probably the majority of the stuff that's come out with WikiLeaks, with which I have no issue. I have to say, I find it difficult to understand why Hillary Clinton should make these strictures, but she obviously has done. If they're illegal, then yes, we need to know about it. These are not the sort of things with which I have an issue. It's the international affairs side of life, the security, the sensitive security details, which do worry me.
Of course, there are other fields and other adversaries where you might find it quite helpful. For example, the news that China is rapidly tiring of its role as guarantor of North Korea. That's probably worth knowing in terms of influencing North Korea's behaviour.
Of course, George, and if you said that to me, would I agree? I said yes, it's very helpful. And would I be guilty of double standards? Yes, I'm afraid I would.
Well, I'll quit while I'm ahead then, Patrick.
I can't defend that one, George. But yeah, that would be terribly helpful to me. What I don't find terribly helpful is the leaking of the fact that the heads of certain Middle East countries are trying to encourage America to attack Iran before she develops a nuclear weapon or the capability to deploy a nuclear weapon. I can't think of anything else that's more likely to destabilize the very sensitive situation with Iran than that sort of information.
Well,
none of us wants. None of us wants.
Certainly destabilize the potentates who said it, if indeed they said it.
Yeah, absolutely, George. I mean, I wouldn't make any particular point with that. I think that this information, that sort of spreading of information, is just deeply mischievous and unhelpful to every single party that's exposed.
It's a great read, though, Patrick, and all over the world they're tuning in. Thanks very much, Patrick Mercer, Conservative MP for Newark and Sherwood, and an all-round good egg, even though he's completely wrong about that. At least he was honest. He was employing the good old double standard. 08717 22 33 44.